All right, and we're back for another episode of the Sports Department Podcast with Justin Valentovic, Stephen Clark, Joe Paolantonio, and Jesse Norman. And we're here to talk about some NFL free agency. The legal tampering period is still going on, but the new league year doesn't start until Wednesday, which is when this goes up. So it would have started, so deals become official then. But basically similar to last year when people were allowed to tamper, they get deals in place. They don't officially sign it yet, but they have a good handshake agreement. A lot of people are signing. A lot of players are getting either restructured or released and going to new teams for similar deals, but not too much money at a clip. But we'll get into each deal significantly, go through each team, start with the AFC in order because that's how Clark found the names and moves. So we're going to start with that. But before we get into all of those moves, guys, what's going on?
I'm doing well, doing very well. I'm enjoying free agency. It's a lot of fun, even though technically didn't start like you said. But it feels like football is back, new league year, so I'm very excited to be talking new football content.
This is great. This is the thing. NFL free agency, it never seems like it's going to be a big deal. It's not really hyped up like NBA free agency or the MLB trade deadline, but yet it always produces more moves consistently every year than like any other day in sports. So it's it had me refreshing Twitter a lot yesterday. A lot of disappointed fans that I was reading.
Yep, I think it's been an interesting one so far. It's been good, but yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I mean, the Steelers are letting everybody walk, but hey, what? At least still got Ben.
Well, that's the major thing. You got Big Ben still, so let's just get into
also,
it.
we're a Super Bowl team.
No, not even close. Not even close. But let's talk about the AFC. We'll start within the AFC North, but we're going to start with the Baltimore Ravens. Their only major move of a new free agent was Kevin Zeitler, who was cut by the Giants, and he's brought in to play left guard, which is good because then they get Lamar some protection.
I just want to ask Joe a question about this. Is it possible that both teams lost the trade with the Odell Beckham trade and Kevin Zeitler and all that stuff? Is it possible that like both teams lost?
That's tough. The Browns were they were upgraded immediately by the trade, and it downgraded the Giants. Right now, it's safe to say that it was probably a wash.
Yeah.
I think Cleveland still might have won more.
Olivier Vernon and Odell definitely contributed more than Jabril Peppers and Dexter Lawrence for the Giants. However, for what the expectations were for Cleveland, yeah, I'd probably call it a wash.
So, but Zeitler to the Ravens, good move for them. They beef up the O-line a little bit. Nothing else we can really say on that.
And they need a number one receiver still.
They do.
I mean, how long are we gonna do this for? It's a little.
They already said before free agency started they're not targeting those number ones. They're not going after Robinson. They're not going after Galladay. They don't feel like,
which means they're hoping Hollywood Brown turns into something, but he probably won't. So who knows?
Yeah. Well, the only other transaction we're waiting on for Baltimore is the Orlando Brown trade. And the longer that goes on, who knows where that's going. That's a guy that could potentially be, you could probably flip him for a first round pick, probably a later first round pick. There's things saying the Colts might be interested in flipping their first for him. But that's really the only transaction we're waiting for on the Ravens. And they don't seem like they're really doing anything else.
Yeah, another team
want to pick up veteran tight end Zach Ertz, dropped by the Eagles. You can run some tremendous 2-3 tight end sets with that offense.
I don't think Ertz blocks enough for what they want. I'm not saying that as a knock on Ertz. I think it's a fault with their system. I think they focus too much on blocking sometimes.
But the two tight end wave kind of seems like it's taking the NFL by storm. So having Mark Ingram and maybe the Zach Ertz in the tight end, that's kind of dirty. That's kind of dirty if you ask me. It's very similar to Jonu and Hunter Henry, which we'll get to later in this podcast.
Yeah,
but that's kind of dirty.
Win a Super Bowl. The window, I can feel it closing. They lost Judon. Tough.
So another team that was going for it
to go for it.
Another team that was going for it last year hasn't really gone for it too much this year, and that's the Buffalo Bills. A bunch of re-signing of their current players. So Matt Milano, Darrell Williams, John Feliciano. So they at least keep people in-house. They haven't really made any moves yet, so there's really nothing to talk about free agency for them as of right now. So let's move on to the Cincinnati Bengals, where they're beefing up the defense a little bit. Mike Hilton from the Steelers, Awuzie, there we go, from Dallas, I believe, right?
Yes.
I think he's coming from Dallas. And then Trey Hendrickson from the Saints. So they get a pass rusher after letting Carl Lawson go. It's good for them that they address the defensive side because at least it fixes an immediate need right away. They still need a tackle and they still need a receiver for Joe Burrow, but this is definitely a good start for the Bengals.
Yeah, nothing much for me to talk about. I don't know about you guys down there, but they need a lot of help, and this is a good start for them.
I mean, I mean, Carl Lawson would have been probably better than Trey Hendrickson.
I agree.
That probably would have been a better allocation of the funds. I mean, the Bengals had a lot of holes, quite obviously, and nothing that I'm hearing here addresses, the
Immediate needs.
Offense, which really needs to be the focal point. You have Zach Taylor, you have Joe Burrow coming back. I need the offense to be a little more fun. I need a little spunk there.
Jesse,
I like what the Bengals are doing. I think they know offensive personnel better than they know defensive personnel. So they're saying they're going to go offense in the draft, plug their defensive needs in free agency. You can argue Lawson and Hendrickson. At the end of the day, Lawson's good. I like Lawson, but he doesn't have the stats that Hendrickson does. Yeah, he gets a lot of pressures and analytics. People like him a lot. He doesn't get sacks. Hendrickson got sacks this year. He led the league in them. So I can get why the Bengals went for that. They also have a lot of interior guys, and Hendrickson gives them an outside guy. So I think that's more where they're going. He fits their scheme a little bit better. As far as corners, that's fine. Get depth. You're letting William Jackson go. Replace him with 2 or 3 guys.
Yeah, so staying in the north, the Cleveland Browns, they haven't really addressed anything offensively for Baker Mayfield, but similar to the Bengals, they're going defense and defense with John Johnson coming over from the Rams, so they're getting a nice little safety on the back end and Takk McKinney to shore up the pass rush a little bit to run with Myles Garrett. So that's good, reinforcing their defense, which is
if I recall seeing like a couple of weeks ago on NFL Network or something, John Johnson was their number 1 priority to get in free agency, which is much needed. That defense needs a little bit of help. Their further up front is fantastic. Myles Garrett is a phenomenal player, but their secondary did need a little bit of help. So this is a big get for Cleveland. They're starting to get everything together, and I would not be surprised if this team makes a division championship run this year.
Yeah, no, I love the John Johnson fit in Cleveland. I think this also helps take some pressure off of Delpit, the rookie from last year, who struggled a little bit, and a lot of Cleveland fans were not too happy about that after his great run with LSU. But I think this gives them a legit safety, easily the best safety that was available. They put out the little money that they had. They got him. This roster doesn't have holes. Like, you can look through it.
They shored it up.
Their linebacking core can, maybe get a little bit of help. I think they'll address that in the draft, though. But I really don't. You look across, I mean, maybe they can get a little bit better at cornerback, shore that up a little bit, but they really don't have many holes on this roster.
No, Cleveland's becoming a place where people want to play. I think that's the bottom line. You hear Johnson's agent come out and say that this guy wanted to go to Cleveland, and they're really building a great culture over there. And as you guys said, I mean, there's not a lot of holes on this roster right now. Of course, it's going to be an uphill battle for them, but they seem to be the only one in the division that's really
going for it
right now. Yeah.
So a team that has plenty of holes, that's the Denver Broncos, and they, let Jarrell Casey go, AJ Boye. They were able to at least option Von Miller a little bit to save some money. They franchise tag Justin Simmons, which I don't get at this point why they don't just sign him long term. But they signed Ronald Darby to a 3-year deal, so that's another nice corner. But they needed a lot more, and a quarterback would have been good to try to go after, quite frankly, because Drew Lock isn't the answer, and just a single cornerback won't fix all their problems.
Got to tell that to John Elway, though.
I have a lot of problems with this Darby deal. he doesn't fit their scheme, literally whatsoever. In Washington, they run very much a cover 2, cover 3 scheme, a lot of zone. Denver runs more man than anybody in the league. Darby struggles with man coverage. They had better man corners, and they let them go. It doesn't make. They gave him $10 million a year to not be a scheme fit. It could work out. He could be a guy that, you know, decides to be a really good man corner this year. But right now, giving 3 years, $30 million to a guy that's quite literally never played in your scheme before and has never matched up as a man corner, when that is predominantly what you do, I don't get it personally.
Yeah, this team has really not done much as far as the big needs. I mean, corner needed to be upgraded. Nothing doing. The Broncos also offensively is a disaster. This is such.
Well, it's only a disaster because of the quarterback. You know, they have plenty of weapons. It's really just the quarterback is what makes it a complete disaster. And that starts with Drew Lock, and they need to address it in the draft, if possible. I don't think they'll be able to.
I don't think they'll be able to above a quarterback. Maybe Mac Jones will be there. But, you know, do they take that risk of a non-mobile quarterback when they have an okay line, but not a fantastic line by any stretch of the imagination? And how much better is Mac Jones going to be than Drew Lock?
That's the thing.
You know, that's a debate.
It doesn't matter. This team continues to miss out on top tier talent, and they end up with the Darbys of the world and the Melvin Gordons of the world. And it's second tier free agency.
I agree. And one last note before we move on to the next team. It's just like the front office. It's the front office more than anything, I think. It just really is. They're in love with Drew Lock for some reason. Don't know why, but it's the horrible front office. That's all I have to say about this.
That's actually a pretty good
I don't know
segue.
if they're necessarily in love. I'm just going to say, at this point, Denver, it's just like spinning tires. Like for the past 3 years, like what has Denver done that's progressed in the past 3 years? They just keep trying to do the same thing, and it's like you're 6-10 every year. Why are you still committing to this formula?
So basically, Clark had a pretty good segue where it's a team that kind of has no idea what they're doing, bottom tier free agents, mess of a front office. That's the Houston Texans, and quite frankly, they signed a bunch of no names that doesn't really matter because Deshaun Watson's he wants to get the hell out of there. He's not playing with any of these guys anyway.
You're saying Camus Gruger Hill is a no name? Justin, that's disrespectful.
The most noticeable name is Mark Ingram, and the last time they got an old running back, it was David Johnson. So doesn't really matter. None of these people. They got Tyrod Taylor, who very well could be the starting quarterback come opening day.
I think so.
That's the only contract that I like. That's the only signing that I like here. They made all of these cuts and restructures to get this cap room. They were at no cap room. They did all these things to get around 30+ million, somewhere around there. And they just blew it on depth.
On garbage.
Who cares about depth when you're not good? Why do you need a bunch of offensive lineman backups?
Or not going to have your franchise quarterback playing for you anymore.
If you're planning on trading Watson, maybe keep some cap room open so you can get back some assets from another team. I just don't understand why you're blowing this money on 2-year, $5 million deals, because it's that's a good depth signing. When you combine 12 of those and you've now spent $25 million this free agency on backups, it doesn't make any sense. If you would have condensed that money and really tried to make a Deshaun Watson play, why didn't you go after Kenny Golladay? Be like, look, we got you Will Fuller. We'll re-sign Will Fuller. We'll go after Kenny Golladay. We have 2 legit receivers here for you. Come back. No, they went out and got a bunch of defensive linemen and offensive linemen that aren't going to start.
Yep. And that's basically all I got to say about that. Another team in the AFC South, the Colts, they haven't signed anybody. They haven't lost anybody per se just yet. They haven't really done anything, but that was expected with Chris Ballard. So nothing to say there because There just isn't. So the Jacksonville Jaguars also in the AFC South. Most notable, Philip Dorsett, Carlos Hyde, Marvin Jones, and Shaquill Griffin, surprisingly. So Urban Meyer's trying to get some talent around, which you would assume to be the number 1 pick, Trevor Lawrence, at this point.
They're going to have a very, very exciting team, especially when Lawrence comes to town, too. That's almost a guarantee at this point. And they're just trying to put little pieces here and there all around him. Their receiving core is a lot of fun, as it was last year. They have a good running game. They have James Robinson there already, putting little pieces on defense. I see what they're doing in free agency. So they're trying to compete. They're going to have a fun little team down there in Jacksonville. I don't think they still win. I don't think they win the division still, because I think the Titans and Colts are still better than them. But they have a really fun team that they're brewing down there.
Now, these are all really good moves.
Yeah.
I think the Shaquill Griffin signing is going to be huge for them. I mean, Jacksonville is a team that last year you could look around and you could see so many holes up and down the roster, but you have to shore up that defense. That was the name of the game. And it looks like they made some good moves. The Marvin Jones signing is nice. It's good to see him going.
They got capable pros to go around Trevor Lawrence at this point.
Exactly.
It's basically is what it is. It's what the Texans attempted to do, but they failed horribly. So let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, where the only significant move is they signed guard Joe Thuney to a 5-year, $80 million deal, trying to plug in the O-line and fix it a little bit, even though tackle was their main problem. But they got some beef for Pat Mahomes, so that's still good.
That's good. That's cool. They still need tackles. Like, that's great. Like, interior alignment is fantastic to have it. It is. But still, like Justin and I think we said on the other podcast, that having your tackles is the most important part of an offensive line. They protect those edge rushers. They protect your blind side. It's the most important. And cutting, I guess they had to cut 2 of the most for cap room and all that stuff, but they have to work on it soon, because tackles are starting to go. There's still one out there, but they're starting to go unless they draft one with their very late pick that they have.
The thing is, they couldn't afford tackles already. Trent Williams is going to end up signing for probably $22 million plus. And then after him, what really good left and right tackles were there out there? I'm kind of expecting Schwartz to come back on a smaller deal, honestly, because he hasn't had any information out about anybody interested in him.
Yeah, they very well,
I can tell,
could bring both of them back, just on smaller deals with more incentives.
Well, this is the thing. I don't think there's a lot being overstated about Fisher. He's not going to play this year. He ruptured his Achilles in the conference championship.
Yeah, and Achilles is like 9 months to a year.
It's at least 9 months. Yes, it's at least 9 months. So he's pretty much out for the year anyway. Schwartz was hurt a lot. They couldn't get a tackle, so I like them getting Thuney, because at least if the tackles aren't great, if you have that interior, at least Mahomes can step up into the pocket. That was the problem with the Tampa Bay, the Super Bowl. There was no pocket for Mahomes to even step up into, because across the line, it was just collapsed. At least if the tackles are getting blown off the edges, they can just space them out and try to give Mahomes a couple seconds to move up into the pocket. I felt like there was no tackles that they really wanted. So look out for that at number 32 for them. I think they'll definitely take a tackle at 32 or 31.
Joe, you got anything on the Chiefs?
I got nothing on the Chiefs. You guys really summed it up. I mean, this is when they cut both their tackles. Obviously, something was going up. So you have to wait till after the draft to make a full evaluation on them.
So staying,
my one prediction, since they got Thuney, they're going to run the ball a lot more this year.
Well,
they're getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire going.
Well, didn't they just cut Damian Williams too?
Yeah, but that was because he also wanted a contract, I think.
Yeah, he was going to be on the last year of his deal, but he opted out.
Yeah, but
then
the running back position
they're ready to do it.
Yeah, but their running back position is similar to tight ends nowadays too. You need two running backs.
They'll find it.
I think they're fine with I think they're fine. They're fine. Right. They can get a 4th round rookie. They can get Darrell Williams back. They'll be fine. Especially, I think Helaire's going to go for over 1,200 yards this year. Like, he's going to be their bell cow.
So speaking of an offensive line, one of the better offensive lines were the Raiders this past season with, Rodney Hudson, Richie Incognito, Gabe Jackson, Trent Brown. Well, they're all not going to be back for the Raiders next year. So they're going to start a clean slate, and they've been looking to build through the draft. So surprisingly, they went out and signed Yannick Ngakoue from the Ravens, Vikings, whoever he last played for a 2-year deal. So they get their pass rusher that they've been looking for since they traded Khalil Mack away and John Gruden went full nuclear and blew up that whole roster. So it's a move that fits what they need.
Now, right now, I don't understand why they would just get rid of their nearly entire offensive line. That was probably the best part of their team. It's what the Raiders do, though. They like to get rid of their own talents. No, this is really bad. I don't really care about the Yannick move because there's no excuse. There's no excuse. I mean, they're taking a big cap hit for Rodney Hudson too.
Yeah. No, you're right. I agree with you too. That I agree with the part that you said that that's the best part of the team, because honestly, they don't have much on this team to offer. Yes, they have Henry Ruggs and Carr's okay, but it's not much. It's not appealing to go to Vegas right now. It's really not. Not a good job so far. No, not a good job.
I don't know what to make of a couple of these moves. I like some of it. I like the Ngakoue deal because he's still, I think people forget how young he is. He's still only like 26. It feels like he's so much older because he's just bounced around the league, but he's not. Another thing, Rodney Hudson asked to be released. So that's kind of a thing of like they didn't think they were going to be able to trade him. Trent Brown, they didn't want to pay him big money, but you had a good line together. You probably should have continued to build it. The only thing I can think is, this is a typical Gruden and Mayock thing that they've already fallen into, where they have something that's good, but they want to build it through the draft anyway, so they just trade off the assets or they just let it go. But the problem is, if they keep pushing it off and getting rid of veteran guys,
they're never going to get anywhere.
They're never going to get anywhere if they're like, well, these guys don't fit because the timeline is 3 years from now. Well, what if in 3 years from now or 2 years from now, you don't have a good line? Like, yeah, that line could have been deteriorating by that point, definitively. But if you don't have anybody to replace them anyway, what's the point of getting rid of them? It's not, maybe the Raiders have a bunch of backups that they like going into the year. But I certainly haven't heard that.
Yeah, and last point for me, I like the Yannick Ngakoue move because they needed a pass rusher because Cleveland Farrell is not the only man to get it done for that team. But also, Jesse, you brought up his age. He's 25 and doesn't turn 26 until the end of this month. So
yeah,
that's a very tradable contract as well, with it being only 2 years for $13 million each for a 25-year-old who's entering his prime right now. But let's move to the last team in the West, and that's the LA Chargers, where basically their only moves were beefing up the offensive line. Matt Flair, I think I pronounce it, and Corey Linsley from the Packers. So Mike Pouncey retired, immediately find his replacement with an all-pro center, and they get another offensive lineman to protect Justin Herbert. And that's what you want to do with a young quarterback, is protect them.
No, that's a good move. That's all.
Yeah, I agree.
The Packers let him go because they pump out linemen. Other teams don't. The Chargers had a reason to give him that much money, and that reason's Herbert. They'll probably draft a tackle as well. So their line, for the most part, should look entirely different. And I mean, hey, Cincinnati, take note, because
this is what you gotta do.
LA seen that Herbert wasn't getting protected enough, not even nearly as bad as Joe Burrow. And they went all in and said, nope, we are just worried about protecting our franchise quarterback.
Smart.
And that's what you got to do. Protect the investment.
Good ownership.
And let's talk about the Miami Dolphins, because they were surprisingly really good this past year. So we thought, okay, maybe they'll make a splash. And their only moves of free agency is Jacoby Brissett as the new backup quarterback to either Watson, to whoever's there, and then a tight end, Keithan Carter. But they also traded for Benardrick McKinney and Isaiah Wilson, so another tackle for a little bit of protection. But as a whole, relative quiet offseason for the Dolphins.
Not what we were expecting from Miami.
Yeah, no, I agree. These moves are okay that they made. I know this happened a couple weeks ago now, but I still don't like that Kyle Van Noy move. He was the main part of this defense and why this defense was so good the past year. I just don't like why they did it. Like they could have afforded him if they really wanted to. Like I know that he was only there for 1 year too, and didn't like have enough time maybe to connect with the team. They didn't feel that. Maybe that's why they got rid of him. I personally don't know, but I just don't like that move out of all the stuff they did. Otherwise, I guess they didn't do much, so can't really talk too much.
Yeah,
I felt like they got rid of Van Noy because they were,
Gotta
saving money.
go
They
for it.
wanted to put that money somewhere else at a different position that they felt like they could upgrade, like wide receiver or, somewhere in that range. But they haven't. Maybe they do go out and get Galladay. We still don't know about that, so that's a possibility.
T.Y. Hilton's available too if they wanted a veteran receiver.
If they want a veteran, like there's guys there. But if you're going for a second tier guy, you didn't need to cut Van Noy for those. But I like the McKinney trade. I think he fits there pretty well. They got him for pretty much nothing.
And a quick note: Dolphins actually just signed Malcolm Brown, running back from the Rams.
Oh.
So they just did that move right now. They did that move right now. Little, not breaking news. This is going up tomorrow, but
they needed a running back. They needed something more at running back position, which I thought they would be in on like a Marlon Mack type of player, but not bad.
Not bad at all.
So let's talk about a team that we're going complete polar opposites from some team that, you thought they'd go all in and sign everybody. They did into a team who, last year didn't really have any talent, who basically went out and got everybody. They got Nelson Aguilar, Henry Anderson, Kendrick Bourne, Dalvin Goodrow, Hunter Henry, Jonu Smith, Jalen Mills, Matthew Judon. That's the New England Patriots. Bill Belichick did not like going 7-9. So he said, I'm reinforcing this team. And they went out and got everybody basically.
Bill Belichick saw Tom Brady go win a Super Bowl and say, hey, we got to do something about that. It looks like we were the problem all along, and it wasn't him. So he went out, just put his pockets on the table and went and bought everybody, just like he said. And a lot of good moves, too. A lot of depth here, too. The moves they made, for the most part, were good. I love the double tight end move, even though it's very, very expensive for 2 tight ends. I do like the moves in general. Aguilar's okay. He's not the best. He's not the worst. But the main problem with all these signings is that they have a bunch of like number 2 and number 3 receivers. They still don't have that number 1 top guy that would be Cam's number 1 target to be a number 1 receiver. I just, looking at the signings, looking at who they still have in their roster, I just don't see anybody that can be number 1.
I think they think that it's Jacoby Myers. We'll see. Jacoby Myers was good last year, but we also got to remember there was no wide receiver 2, 3, or 4 pretty much. So he could look a lot better with players coming in. I like all their signings for the most part. The one I most don't like is Jalen Mills, but even then it's $6 million a year. They can cut him after a year or two. It doesn't really do anything. And getting Trent Brown back, I think, is huge. Because when healthy, that's a top 5 right tackle in the NFL right there. He's already familiar with the system. He was there before. He's going to blend right back in. They hit everything they needed to. And, moving into this year, they're going to be good again. They're going to – people forget, too, they had like 9 opt-outs last year.
Yeah, their whole
especially
defense,
on
essentially.
defense.
The opt-outs.
And Gilmore was hurt.
And I think Gilmore was hurt. And I think this goes for Cam and everybody who joined a new team last year, that they didn't have like the whole preseason and all that stuff. And it took a long time for them to get acclimated with their teams. This goes for every new person.
And New England. And going off that, New England is the hardest scheme to probably learn with everything that Bill puts into it. Exactly. So their schemes, I think everybody gets better in like the second year, but I think Cam and them should take a big step. If they don't, it's kind of clear that Cam doesn't have it as much anymore. But I think last year really was more of a detriment to, they didn't really have any running backs. They didn't really have any receivers. They didn't really have any, tight ends, anything. So good on them for deciding they don't know how to draft receivers or tight ends, so they went out and got them.
Joe, you got anything real quick on the Patriots?
Oh, this is great. I mean, you want to see the Patriots really go for it. I mean, this is with the two tight ends now. I'm not worried about them not having a true number one receiver because I think the offense is going to have more than enough playmakers and more than enough, offensive prowess to get it done. This is Bill we're talking about on the defensive side of the ball. They're not going to finish 7-9 again.
All right, so we got 3 more teams left in the AFC before we take a break and come back with the NFC. So let's just blow through it real quick. The Jets, Corey Davis, Jared Davis, and Carl Lawson. They got a receiver, they got a pass rusher, and they got a linebacker. Nothing to write home about, but cheap deals for good players.
Great moves. I think they're all just great moves in general. They're starting to get some depth and fill the spots that they need to fill. Great moves so far.
Yeah, Corey Davis, we'll see how he does there. He was a great talent in Tennessee, really only put it together 1 year, kept getting hurt, had a lot of inconsistencies. Let's see what New York does with him. Carl Lawson was another good one. Let's see how he progresses more. New York seemed really intent on getting guys that were going into that second contract that they were going to build with. I think they really want their timeline to be in the next 2 years. They want to be relevant again.
Oof. Joe, you got anything on the Jets?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So, Joe, you can start off with the Steelers. What do you think about the BJ Finney move then?
Oh, this has potential to shake up the league. No, it seems like the Steelers are fine. Just
They're coasting. They're coasting. That's it.
They're punting on the season because they have no money to make any moves because Ben. Simple as that, right, Jesse?
Thanks, Big Ben.
Yeah. They got Sutton back. The Sutton deal's good. He's fine. He's a good rotation piece in the secondary. They're going to ask him to probably be a starter this year. They lost Hilton. I don't know why. You could have gotten him back.
The Jesse this time right now compared to the Jesse like week 10 of the NFL season last year is so different with the Steelers. And it's so funny to watch.
Yeah, but now we have Brooklyn.
I love you, Jesse.
Yeah, but now we have Brooklyn Nets.
Oh,
Jesse.
yeah, and I care about that significantly
and
more.
if they don't make the finals, boy, will you be hearing it from all of us. Boy, will you hear it from all of us.
Doesn't even matter to me.
So final team in the AFC is the Tennessee Titans. They let Malcolm Butler go, Adam Humphries, Adoree Jackson, Kenny Vaccaro, and they replaced it with Danico Autry, Bud Dupree from Jesse Steelers, and Kendall Lamb. So they get a nice pass rusher. They get D Lyman and Danico Autry, and they get an offensive tackle. So okay.
And also Janoris Jenkins recently, like within the last hour.
All right, so they get some secondary help.
They did well. I thought they did very well. Again, like the defense was the biggest problem for Tennessee. Their offense is fine. Derrick Henry runs that offense. I'm still not sold on Tannehill 100%, but that's just me. But hey, they did well. They gotten some defensive pieces that they needed. So good for them. I think they did very well.
Oh, yeah. I agree. I think they did. The Bud Dupree signing is pretty big. I think people don't realize the Steelers defense really took that turn when Dupree went down. Dupree's a fantastic, not even just edge rusher. The Steelers put him in line. He can get at the run. He's a 3-down linebacker. He can do a lot of different things. I think he fits very well in Tennessee. The only thing is the injury concern. They did give him a big contract with a lot of years and a lot of money. So they better really hope that injury isn't worse than it could be.
I just don't know. They just released Adoree Jackson. It's tough. So we're gonna see where he ends up.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a big release.
He can't stay healthy.
Well, that's the thing.
He just can't stay healthy.
When he would play defense, he didn't offer much as a corner. He was a good return man, but nothing much as a corner. But that wraps it up for the AFC. So when we come back, we're going to break down the entirety of the NFC and all those moves. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, and we're back for the rest of the free agency recap from legal tampering period before the official league year starts. So let's just get right into the NFC with the Atlanta Falcons. They haven't signed anybody, so we can move on. The Arizona Cardinals, just J.J. Watt. Nothing really else.
That
to
was
go on.
It's just JJ Watt.
Well,
Yeah, make it seem like it's Joe Schmo off the street in Old Bridge over here, but it's not. It's JJ Watt, and that's a big piece of their defense. So that's all I gotta say. Yeah, that's it. I don't know.
They re-signed Marcus Golden for a good deal. 2 years, $9 million. That's solid for his production.
And he was only good in Arizona. That brief stint with the Giants really proved nothing. So whatever.
He was good with the Giants.
He was great.
He had a good year.
He was better with Arizona.
That's the resident Giant fan instead of the Colts fan. His opinion.
There's no Giants fans here, but
only Ravens, Colts, and Steelers here.
Yeah.
So the Carolina Panthers, they signed Pat Eflin, Cam Irving, and Keith Kirk. No idea who the hell that guy is. So they got 2 offensive linemen, cool, whoever their quarterback is going to be after Teddy Bridgewater.
These are bad signings.
I was going to say the same thing. These signings stink.
Pat Elflin wasn't he bad on Minnesota. I don't know. He was in Minnesota last year and he was god awful. Like he was terrible. And they knew immediately once free agency started they needed to move off of him. So I don't know why they did cuts of like Trey Boston and Kawan Short if these were the guys you were going to get. Everybody was like, oh, they're making space. They got to get Deshaun Watson. Yeah, at this point you do because you wasted your cap space for a guard that shouldn't be starting and Cam Irving, who's been bad since he got in the league.
If Deshaun winds up going to Carolina, do we think McCaffrey's involved in that trade somehow?
I think it'd be Derek Brown centered.
Ooh.
I'm not even sure what they would do because
the Texans don't even know what they want.
Let's
be honest.
Like, do they get another running back? And I don't want to compare Christian McCaffrey to David Johnson
or Mark Ingram.
They don't need a running back.
Exactly. And McCaffrey also does have injury concerns and he does have a major contract. Yeah, he's really good, but he has a lot of money tied to him.
Yeah. So the Chicago Bears, they needed a quarterback. They let Mitch go. They have Nick Foles under contract. Who is Matt Nagy and their GM going to tie their wagon to? And the answer is Andy Dalton. Why not just stick with Mitch Trubisky then at that point?
That's a placeholder.
Mitch Trubisky would have been a placeholder. But
you can't re-up with Trubisky.
Yeah.
Because he's the young quarterback. You don't keep him around.
This is stupid.
Russell Wilson wasn't gonna happen.
Yeah. I guess
we're still not sure.
Hey,
the last I heard,
I don't think he's going to be traded.
Don't want any part of a trade. That's the last I heard. The Seahawks don't want any part of a trade.
The Seahawks absolutely don't want any part of a trade. Yes. But guess what? They got to start signing some of these linemen then, because Wilson's not going to be happier going back. Go out and get Rodney Hudson. He was just cut. Please go out and get Rodney Hudson. Like,
their last great offensive lineman was Max Unger, who was a center.
Max Unger.
And they traded.
Bless you. This is a stupid move. There were better quarterbacks than Dalton out there, like Tyrod Taylor.
This is such a Bears move. It really is.
Tyrod Taylor, Jacoby, like, come on.
You also already have Foles there. So, what does Dalton give you that Foles isn't?
He also got Foles for a lot longer.
Yeah.
You could have took this $10 million and put it towards Allen Robinson or anybody else and just rot away with Nick Foles.
You want to say that like this is a placeholder, and while I think it is, I don't know what it's a placeholder to. And
they don't know. They at that point don't know.
If you go into the season with Dalton and Foles as your quarterbacks, just punt on the season. Like, just quite frankly, just punt on it.
Just give up.
Give the Packers another division title. Who cares?
That's what it seems like is happening.
Yeah, Nagy is going to be fired. They're going to clean house, and Andy Dalton will go with them. So the Dallas Cowboys, they obviously re-signed Dak Prescott for a whole boatload of money. Clark and I talked about in the other pod. So Jesse and Joe, you got anything you want to say on that? Because quite frankly, they haven't signed anybody else.
No, of course he had to sign Dak Prescott. That was the writing was on the wall for a long time. You try to delay it, but the thing is that the Cowboys have been good with Dak Prescott under center. Right now, obviously, there's not a lot of money to throw around. So they're limited free agent moves. It's okay. And also the pressure's really off because they should have an easy division win.
Yeah, the division's bad.
I can see
Good for-
the Eagles maybe
for
making a
Dak.
run. Hey, good for Dak. I love Dak. I love Dak as a person. Dak's a great person on and off the field, like I said in the pod with Justin. I'm happy for him, but maybe they do have a division locked up. I don't know. You never know with that division. You never know.
I think Washington is the best bet. Otherwise, out of Dallas, Philly's roster is a mess. It's not good. Good for Dak Prescott getting his money. The problem with the Cowboys now, they're pretty much tied to this roster, and this trio of Dak,
Cooper and
Zeke, Amari, Cooper. And then you got, Zach Martin and everything. And that's fine. That's good. That's a good core. Is that a Super Bowl core? Probably not. And you're kind of tied to it for 3 to 4 years. So maybe stop giving money to positions that you probably shouldn't pay that much, Jerry Jones.
And the Cowboys have been
Zeke contract.
And the Cowboys have been relatively one of the better drafting teams to where they don't need to shell out massive amounts of money like they have that they could have easily found and replaced. So the Lions, though, however, they're bad. And there's nothing to talk about new at all.
No.
So,
I think Tyrell Williams is interesting, only to the fact that the Raiders signed him to be a number 1 guy. He clearly wasn't a number 1 guy, and I don't know why they wanted him to be a number 1 guy. But as a number 2, number 3 on a 1-year, $4 million deal, that's not bad value. That's not bad value whatsoever. But other than that, they stink.
Yeah, they're bad and they're irrelevant. So who cares? But the Green Bay Packers, their only move of notable anything was Aaron Jones getting signed to 4 years, $48 million after he was being tagged, but they obviously worked out a long-term deal. They haven't hit anybody on the free agent market yet, but at least they keep Aaron Rodgers happy with his running back.
A little bizarre that they drafted a quarterback and a running back.
Year. Just to keep the two currents around.
Well, so far keeping the current quarterback, you never know.
You do never know.
Yeah, but I got nothing. Cool.
Yeah, LA
Aaron
Rams
Jones is back. Yeah.
LA Rams, Leonard Floyd. They just extended him. Nothing else.
They haven't lost anybody.
Yeah, they have infinite money, so they're the one team you don't have to worry about salary cap problems with. It being reduced. So they're fine.
I really don't like the Leonard Floyd deal. I don't like how much they gave him. He's really only been productive 1 year, and they gave him 4 years, $64 million. Would have liked that a whole lot more if that was 2 years, $32 million. But allegedly the Giants called and hiked the price up about $4 or $5 million a year. They were ready to commit like 10, 11 million to him, and allegedly the Giants offered him 14. So they had to go up to 16. So the Giants dodged a bullet. I don't know if they actually were trying to sign Floyd or just run the price up.
Just trying to screw the Rams over.
Like the Blue Jays. In on everybody, never signs any of them.
Oh yeah, Jesse loves that reference. Yeah, he thinks about that reference every day.
Like how the Nets. Yeah, Justin, the Nets Otto Porter when they signed him to the giant contract.
Superman. Yeah, well, he's a Bull now, so not my problem. But let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Their only significant move, one that hits Joe right in the heartstrings, is Dalvin Thompson, the former New York Giants defensive tackle, similar to a Linval Joseph situation where they didn't sign him. So he hits the road and goes up to Minnesota. So they get a little bit more help on the D-line, and that's about it. Nick Vigil, Greg Joseph, and Stephen Weatherly. So who cares about them? But the big name is Dalvin Tomlinson.
And yeah, Dalvin Tomlinson could have been traded during the season if the Giants weren't going to bring him back. Teams were offering apparently, and they didn't do it. And this is prime Gettleman move right there.
Oh, we'll get to the prime. We'll get to the prime Gettleman moves soon. Don't you worry.
Prime Gettleman moves.
I like it for Minnesota. They let Linval Joseph leave. Then they realized, wait, we don't have a run stopper, and they were really, really, really bad at stopping the run. So they go out, they get a guy who can stop the run, and he's a lot younger than Linval Joseph was going to be. So good for them. Good signing.
New Orleans Saints. Brees officially retired. We all knew that, but they brought back Jameis and they fleeced and confused Taysom Hill with a contract that doesn't exist at that point. So who knows what the Saints are doing?
A fake contract they gave.
Literally a fake contract. I mean, they released a lot because they kind of had to release a lot of their players, and they have to get rid of some of their players because their cap isn't the best around town. But like the biggest thing out of all this coming out of Saints is Drew Brees, and you got to celebrate his career a little bit because he is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time to play this game. Very talented, good guy on and off the field. And it's sad to see him go because I feel like a lot of the older generational guys from like the early 2000s are basically almost all out of the league at this point. And it's like, that's basically what we grew up on.
Ben's never going.
Ben's
never leaving.
Ben and Tom, man, like those are the old guys still around.
Ben and Tom.
Matt
Ryan's now old.
Ryan Fitzpatrick counts.
Oh yeah, Fitzpatrick too. You're right, Fitzpatrick. That's a good one.
Yeah.
But no, congrats to Drew Brees and his retirement, and best of luck in whatever he does in his next broadcasting stuff and all that. So, yeah.
Yep. But the Saints, no idea what they're going to be doing.
I'm very interested in why they tagged Marcus Williams. I don't feel like they valued Marcus Williams that much as to give him $10 million a year. They don't really value the safety position in that defense. It's very much a man cover, cover two defense where you can slip different safeties in and it doesn't really matter as much. That's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up trading him because I don't know if they want to, give him that much money. Yeah, weird. I just don't feel like they liked him enough to tag him, but they did.
And we're moving on to Joey P, your favorite team, the New York Football Giants, addressing needs at the running back position and the wide receiver position, and mainly at pass rushing, where they initially tagged Leonard Williams, and the tag was going to be $19 million. So what does Gelman do? He pays him $21 million for the next 3 years. Then
that's not entirely. I mean, first of all, you say running back depth, which was much needed. I disagree.
It's called sarcasm.
Thank you.
Sarcasm.
wide receiving depth was needed. The John Ross move. Like when you look at money, it's not terrible.
I don't think depth was needed. I think a number one was needed.
I like the John Ross move a lot.
I mean, when you look at the money, it's not terrible, but
exactly.
I don't know if it's like a fit in the offense. I mean, John Ross is really just a deep threat, and I don't trust Danny Dimes to hold on to the ball that long and have it stripped away from him in time and have the arm. But I mean, the real thing is that you can't allow Leonard Williams' agent to hold you hostage while 31 other teams are allowed to go out and sign free agents. That was the biggest problem. There was reports that the Giants had to wait. So they had every other team had a 24-hour head start on them. And the Leonard Williams cap hit isn't as bad as it sounds, but you could have gotten a couple players in the interim, because I think Leonard Williams had a great year in 2020. Had a great year, but is that who he is? Prisoner of the
We'll see, and that's the thing. If that's not who he is, you probably don't shell out $45 million guaranteed. I mean, it's a $63 million deal, 45 guaranteed. That's
a
18.
lot.
18 is not guaranteed. That's it. That's literally it. So I would have much liked this deal a lot more if it was 63 million, 30 million guaranteed. Just guaranteeing over, I think that's like close to 75% of the contract. That's a lot, especially for a lineman who has 1 year of production.
Yeah.
It is a lot, but I think he can prove to be a big centerpiece of that defense. I really do. And if it winds up working out and he brings other
paid like one
over there, huh?
He's gonna be getting paid like one.
He is. So let's see if
he needs to.
On the field.
He needs to develop into a top 5, defensive lineman on that contract. He's getting paid $21 million a year. He's getting paid like a supreme edge rusher. He's getting more than like Shaq Barrett's getting.
Significantly more than edge Shaq rusher. Barrett.
Yes. Yeah. He needs to be edge rusher, defensive run stopper. He needs to be both combined into one for
What's
that
Aaron
money.
Donald's contract? Let's see. Just because I'm interested.
Are you
Yeah,
really interested? Or are you
because
trying to rub it in Joe's face?
Aaron Donald's getting paid $22.5 million per year, so only $1.5
Oh.
million more than Leonard Williams.
Well, when you put it like that, I mean,
Well, but I think in context, that's what you have to put it in that context.
yeah.
Like while I agree Leonard Williams is incredibly talented and he can be, that's the thing. He can be that top 5 defensive lineman. He was a huge prospect out of USC. He was a top 5 pick. He was great last year too. I again just don't like. I feel like there was way better ways to attack this deal. If you were really sure he was going to be good, give him a longer contract that you can continue to restructure. Don't give him this guaranteed money that you now can't restructure in the future. Yeah, you can cut him after 2 years, but you've already given him all the money.
Yeah. So let's move on to the final significant team. We still have a few more teams, but the main significant team is the Super Bowl champions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they're keeping the band back together. They're not going out and getting free agents and replacing it. They're keeping everybody in-house. Shaq Barrett, Rob Gronkowski are coming back. Chris Godwin tagged. Levante David got an extension. So they're keeping all the main parts in place. Obviously Fournette and Ndamukong Suh, it sounded like they're working on a deal. Antonio Brown, that jury's still on him. So, but for the most part, they're keeping the core intact, and that's what they wanted to do, and they're getting it done.
They managed it perfectly. It's very impressive, actually.
That's just, yeah, you're right. The thing that they're going around saying now is we're going for 2. They're trying to try to go back to back. It's going to be very hard, almost, I would say, nearly impossible. It's very hard to go back to back Super Bowl champions. The last one to do it was the Patriots, I think. So they're to try at least. Good for them for attempting. We'll see what happens. Great offseason so far for them, though.
I think this is a good offseason, and I think it's been a very smart offseason for the Bucs. They didn't let Godwin hit free agency. They tagged him. They didn't let Levante David hit free agency. They signed him before free agency even started. What I think is even at a discount. $12.5 million for Levante David, I think is a steal. Shaq Barrett got paid, but he didn't get paid excessively. $72 million, but only half of that being guaranteed. You're essentially getting a player similar to the Leonard Williams thing, but you're giving him less guaranteed money, and you can cut him after 2 years, but still have 2 years left on that deal that he could be outperforming by that point. Bringing Gronk back on a 1-year deal is good. He can turn it on when he needs to.
I think he will too, because he'll be
I really like
back
this
in football
offseason.
shape now for a full year. And he came out of retirement. He was in like weight loss shape and like actual physical great shape, but he wasn't like big bulky tight end shape. So
he was in wrestling shape.
He was in wrestling shape, baby. Yeah. Former champion.
So out of the remaining teams of the Eagles, the Niners, the Seahawks, and the Washington football team, the only significant move is Ryan Fitzpatrick is now a football team member. So that's their quarterback / backup quarterback with Tyler Heineke.
All the other teams happened yet. That it's taken until 2021 for those two to link up. That's it. That's the most shocking part.
Honestly.
Yeah, other than that, the rest of these teams haven't really done anything.
Yeah, I think it was named Fitzpatrick was to be the day one starter as of right now, going into the season. So, hey, they go from one younger, older quarterback to older quarterback. Like, I don't know if I really like the move a lot for Washington. I mean, it is stability for a little bit. It's not good. It's not great. It's not bad. It's stable. It's decent, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. It's Fitzpatrick on another team. What do we expect, honestly?
Another contract or another jersey to add.
It's his ninth team. I looked it up before.
Nice. 2 notes out of all these teams. The Eagles are clearly taking an offseason off. Good for them. I think that's what they should do. Let their cap hits come off the books. Let the contracts just run. You're not doing anything. Don't put any money anywhere. Just literally take an offseason off. Get some good draft picks. try to really just focus on the draft. Also 49ers deal for Jason Verrett. I think that's fantastic. 1 year, $5.5 million. Easily could have probably gotten 10 million somewhere else. Verrett's a guy when he's healthy. He is a fantastic corner. He's super talented. He can play in most schemes. He can play man-to-man or zone. The problem is obviously the health. He was pretty healthy last year, and they got him back. He performed well. I think they got him at a serious discount. I thought a team would really throw, 9-10 million at him. And all of a sudden now corner is still a need for them, but getting Verrett back on that deal makes it not as big of a need as they had before.
Well, any last closing thoughts before we wrap up this podcast?
So.
Nah. All right, cool. Well, that wraps up at least this portion of the NFL free agency. I'm sure we'll have another one here and there down the road to see if any other major vets or whatever signs with whomever, but we'll have a NL West podcast later in the week, as well as a Fast Lane predictions podcast. So Clark, where can everybody listen to those?
Yeah, guys. First of all, thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Sports Department podcast. Us four appreciate it. Steve also is not with us right now. Appreciates it as well. Make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts,
Steve's
Spotify.
not with us.
He's not dead. He's just not with us here.
In spirit.
In spirit, he's here. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. Follow us on our social medias on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Sports Depth Pod. That's Sports DEPT Pod. Justin basically said all the new podcasts that we have for the upcoming week, so I don't have to repeat that. And last night we were starting to figure out what we're going to be doing for WrestleMania week, because that's going to be a lot of wrestling content that week. We're not changing into a wrestling podcast fully. We're not, but it will be a lot of wrestling podcasts coming in early April. So stay tuned to all that fun stuff, and we'll see you in the next episode.